Well, foreigners can no longer own land in South Africa. That's the word from President Jacob Zuma. Government has also announced that local individuals will not be able to own more than 12,000 hectares. That's the equivalent of around 2 farms. We'll get a response to that in a moment. But first, let's take you back to the State of the Nation address.
Foreign nationals will not be allowed to own land in South Africa. But will be eligible for long-term lease. In this regard, the Regulation of Land Holdings Bill will be submitted to Parliament this year.
And in studio this evening, I have Bulelwa Mabasa from Worksmen's Attorneys to discuss this matter and, of course, the possible implications of implicating this bill. Bulelwa, thanks for your time this evening. There are two aspects. There's the local and the foreign aspect. Let's start with the foreign nationals aspect. Were you surprised by that, particularly the time frame for the leases? Because I was just saying to you, I'm used to hearing about 99-year leases. Yeah. This 30 to 50 years was a bit of a surprise.
Yeah. What is not a surprise is the limitation of foreign land ownership. It's been pitted since 2004. As I recall, it's been repeated in other State of the Nation addresses. I think it's important to establish the fact that it's not just a piece of legislation that's been dreamt up out of nowhere. There is Section 25 in the Constitution, which says that government will take measures to ensure that there's an equitable access to land, and in particular in favor of citizens. So that's the background that's relevant in this legislation.
When you speak to people who deal with foreign investors, their first thing to say is a country that does not have the protection of property rights makes them quite jittery. So putting a piece of legislation like this forward at this time, would that not be a concern?
Look, it's not a concern from the perspective that we've seen it happen the world over. Countries such as Switzerland, Canada, Indonesia, India. It's not a unique piece of legislation. I think it's also got to be thought about in the context of the fact that the state is also compelled constitutionally to ensure that there's land reform as part of a constitutional obligation. And in order to do that, I think the state is also duty-bound to at least find out to what extent there is available land for purposes of land reform, and also to have a knowledge of the land ownership patterns that exist.
Okay, let's take a look at the domestic element, the limit to 12,000 hectares, which I was told is roughly about the size of 2 farms. Would that stand constitutional muster? I mean, can government dictate to me how much property I can buy?
You see, that also falls into the issue of balancing the right to property and also the obligation that the state has to fulfill land reform requirements. What we've also seen recently is an expropriation bill, which sets out that land could be expropriated for purposes of a public interest or public purpose. Public interest is stated specifically as any programs that are geared towards land reform. So presumably there will be some kind of an inquiry as to whether or not there is excess land which you may happen to own within the 12,000 hectares arena, which may possibly be required for purposes of land reform, which is defined as is defined under public interest.
Okay. Well, there's going to be a long process, obviously, for this bill to actually go through, and I suppose in that the public will have time to come in and put their opinions to this as well.
Yes, absolutely. There's a public consultation that still has to happen, and as you've correctly pointed out, that it will be tested for constitutionality. There has been an expropriation bill before that was tabled in 2008 and then subsequently withdrawn. So this version of the expropriation bill that we see today is one that is a watered-down version of the previous one, precisely because it seeks to address some of the constitutional issues that were controversial previously.
Do you think any of this could be, should the bill pass every single test, that it could be applied retrospectively?
The retrospective application is not on the cards insofar as the issue of foreign land ownership is concerned. So that bill will be forward-looking. However, the issue of the expropriation bill will affect any current property owner.
Okay, so whoever's busy buying property right now is protected.
Yes, if you're a current landowner who is an owner of land today or historically, the foreign land ownership limitation proposal would not affect you.
Okay. Other countries who are similar to us, I know you did mention India, but you mentioned countries like Switzerland and so on. Others, is this a typical, is there a typical law that limits or restricts foreign ownership?
So what you find is that there are two schools of thought. Some countries have an outright ban for foreign land ownership, and others have some kind of a leasehold system, which is what is proposed in this current bill, which allows foreigners to lease land for a certain period, as was correctly stated. There is a period of 30 to 50 years, which is being proposed currently.
Yeah.
So it's not an outright ban.
Yeah, all right, we'll leave it there. Thanks for your time today. Bulelwa Mabasa giving us a legal perspective on government's land policy. Now, January was a good month for China, the country's foreign direct investment growing at its strongest pace in 4 years. China overtook the United States as the top destination for FDI in 2014, and it seems it's carrying that momentum into the new year.
Foreign direct investment in China grew at its strongest pace in nearly 4 years in January. It surged 29.4% from a year earlier to over 161 billion rand. Cautious investors largely avoided the troubled manufacturing sector, focusing instead on the more resilient services industry.
In January 2015, China showed good momentum in attracting foreign investment. In January, 2,266 companies with foreign investment were established, up 31.8% from a year earlier. Contracted foreign investment was $33.21 billion, up 126.2% compared to the previous year. The actual foreign investment was $13.92 billion, up 29.4%.
But analysts have warned against reading too much into economic indicators for January alone, as strong seasonal distortions linked to the Lunar New Year holidays spurred the market. Earlier data showed FDI in China rose just 1.7% in 2014, the slowest pace since 2012. FDI is an important gauge of the health of the world economy and is also a good indicator of where capital is flowing within a country. China overtook the United States to become the top destination for FDI in 2014, this largely due to falling inflows caused by a deal between US telecoms firm Verizon and its British partner Vodafone. But China's foreign trade still faces many uncertainties.
Our daily question and answer feature is up next, and a special feature for this week, Notes for Nene. Stay with us.